And it's recording. Good. Okay. So, all right. So the first activity we'll talk about is role play. Role playing. Has anybody done that in their class? You've done it. Yeah.
It's the same way how they can try to figure it out to use more vocabulary that they know and get help from their peers as well. And if facilitates their confidence, like they really leave that shyness behind sometimes, and they try to try to understand you better. And even though sometimes it's very, very funny because they misunderstood like some words and then they ended up answering very like big question. But yeah, they know.
Can you briefly explain what is a role play?
Okay. Sometimes we did like face to face, and sometimes we didn't do that with the phone. So we divided the group. With the phone, we divided the group into two. They were placed in another room, and then they call each other, and they try to, for example, the delivery guy was calling the person who requested food to know where the person was, and get like some information. So when you are trying to get an appointment with the doctor, they were trying to do like receptionist, receptionist. Face to face, you try to do the same, but more like local. Like for example, you're in a store or something like that, and used to have some kind of money that they can exchange to do if they have like pictures, so they can like buy and know like the price and things like that.
Yeah. And that the reason that's a really effective teaching method is because the closer the classroom activity is to real life, better the students learn it. Because it seems realistic, so they see the relevance to their daily lives. Also, because it'll be similar to what they experience when they go and do it in real life. And there's nothing like experiential learning to really get the students to learn it deeply and to use the language in that context. So I'm going to play a video of role play. And as you watch, please pay attention to notice what are the 4 steps of the lesson and what are the ways the student uses language skills.
The role-play strategy helps to increase vocabulary and provides useful practice based upon a learner's real and/or immediate needs. In the following segment, the tutor discovers through informal conversation that her student needs more confidence in phoning a physician's office. Together, they create and practice a role play.
So I'm going to jump a little bit. The student explains that her son has a problem with his foot and she needs to call the doctor to get treatment for him.
They create and practice a role play.
So that's
take how you did. Okay, Katie, I have one problem with my son. It is had this not good. It is have problem with the foot. I want to take the doctor appointment. I don't know what I can talk right or not. Will be good for me.
Oh, so you had not called the doctor yet?
Yeah, I know need to now hey, doctor, yes, correct.
Okay, well, why don't we work on that? Is he home from school today?
Yeah, he stayed in home. Okay, I'll take appointment today.
So, let's talk about some words that they might use when you call that doctor's office. They will be asking you, what is the patient's name? Okay, do you understand that?
Yeah, what patient's name is, I said, my son's name.
All right, and you will say your son's name. They will ask, what is his problem or what's his symptoms? Do you know the word symptoms?
Symptoms, yes, I understand.
Okay.
Symptoms. I say what health problem with foot. It is pain so much, it is swollen, it is too hard. Oh yeah, if I take appointment.
Okay, all right. I think that they'll ask you probably about your insurance.
Yes, we need to ask about the insurance. I have insurance. I say but I have
Okay.
insurance.
Okay, so always have your card ready in case they ask you anything about your insurance.
Yes, when you make the phone call.
Okay. Why don't we try practicing making that phone call to the doctor before you actually do it? So let's, your phone you have here, let's try making that call. I will pretend that I am the doctor's office and then you are calling.
Okay,
Okay?
and I think telephone number.
Okay. Hello, Dr. Law's office.
Hello. I want to take appointment today with my son. It is problem with foot.
Okay, what seems to be the problem with his foot?
I don't know what this happens. It is pain so much. It is swollen. It is I don't know.
It's swollen. Does he have a fever?
No fever. It is bigger.
It's bigger, yes, all right. No fever though.
It is
Did you take his temperature?
yes. It is his temperature.
Oh, he does have a temperature.
Yes.
All right, well, have you seen the doctor before? Are you a new patient?
Yes, I am new patient.
Okay, you are a new patient. All right, well, let us set up an appointment for you. Oh, could you hold on a minute? I have another call.
Okay, thank you.
And then I'll come back. They do that many times too. They put you on. You just have to wait.
You have to be realistic.
I'm sorry for the interruption. All right, let us get the name of your son.
My son's name is Lucas Smetona.
Smetona, how do you spell that?
Smetona.
Okay, and what is your birthday?
Birthday, it is 12 months.
Okay.
Just
30, 12, December 30?
yes.
Okay, so he's running fever though.
I don't show doctor very well.
All right, but I think you're right. I think we need to have him see the doctor very soon. Maybe I help. Well, let me look at my computer here, and I'll give you our first appointment here for today. Can you get in 30 minutes? Would you be able to get here in a half hour?
About 25 minutes.
25 minutes? All right, fine. If you could get your son in here, Dr. Wall will be able to see him.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, we'll see you then now. Now, make sure you bring your insurance card.
Okay.
All right? And since you're a new patient, you might have to fill out paperwork. So bring any information that you would need with you to fill out your family history. Okay, you understand?
Yes.
All right. Okay, well, thank you very much, and we'll see you in 30 minutes.
Okay, thank you. See you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
All right, well, you did wonderfully.
Thank you again.
You will not have any trouble calling the doctor. There's a few things. When you call and you make an appointment, instead of saying, I want to take an appointment, maybe it would be good to say, I would like to make an appointment. Make it, yes. Instead of take, let's use the word make. And I would like to make an appointment for my son. This correct? No, they would understand you. But I think this is the proper way to say it. Okay? Yeah. I think they would understand you. Is there any concerns that you had that maybe you didn't understand what she was asking, or maybe any other concerns that you had?
Yes, I can, but couple of what but I do what she's saying.
You understood what she said?
I understand.
Were there any words that you remember that you didn't know what she was trying to say to you?
The whole moment.
Oh, okay.
What is this?
No, that's a very good question. Many times you'll get on the phone and when you call a doctor, and many times they will ask you, can I put you on hold? And that is because another phone call, another patient is calling, and they need to take that phone call also. So they put you on hold, meaning they go take the other call, and they put you on hold. They will come back to you. So you answered properly, though. You said yes, and then you just waited, and that's what you have to do. And if there's any time that you don't understand something, go ahead and say, I don't understand what you're asking me, and can you repeat? There's no problem. Don't ever hesitate to do that. And I know.
Okay. So what were the 4 steps? Mhm. You don't have to say the exact words, if you, just the concept is fine too.
Expected vocabulary.
Review. And then debrief, yeah, and review, right. The preparation is important to support the student. So that's why giving the vocabulary and phrases ahead of time. Because then when they practice it, they're practicing it using that. They're prepared for that. And that's why it's helpful to think through what that interaction would be beforehand in advance, and then pick out which elements are the ones that your students can manage at their level. So she was kind of maybe a low advanced or around there. So she already knew symptoms and swollen. So yeah, temperature, that was really. Yeah. And what way the student used language. The reason I'm asking that is to remember to always have the student being an active producer of language. Explanation is important, that's helpful, but keep in mind to have a good chunk of the time being the student producing language so that they get the practice. So what did she do? She came up with a phrase, so she figured out how to express herself. Yeah.
And there were no connection to some sentences. She managed to say it vocabulary. She knew and just to make the sound understood.
But she also put the difference between take and make. And she was wanting to be sure that it was wrong and
But she wanted to know the correct way. Yeah.
Yes, it was great. I mean, I think I would just said, okay. But she was trying to get into it.
Yeah. I want to know the correct way. Yeah, the key is gearing it to their level. Yeah, but she was asking, so she was.
It was like she knew what to do, and she was able to describe the conditions.
Yeah. And she described the problem. So the tutor had her express what was on her mind, what she wanted to work on for that session, and the tutor had her do the role play, so she was active in that part. She was playing herself and what she was practicing, what she was going to do. When she actually called the doctor. And she gave her space afterwards to say which, if there were any elements that were confusing to her that she wasn't sure about. So she gave a lot of space to the student to speak, to express what she wanted to do and to practice.
Sometimes the retention level, when you explain the situation that it's going to be on the role play, they pick up from words and there that they even know, but
Yeah.
they want to express it like the way that they think that is right.
Mm.
And that's one of the things that they used to do when you explain the situation, they kind of figured out what it was, but then using the new vocabulary, they want to implement it sometimes.
Yes.
Even if it's not exactly.
Yes, right. They want to.
Use the retention of how you say it and how you explain it.
Sometimes. So, what resources could the tutor use as part of the lesson, in addition to what she used? They used a phone, and I'll ask you to get into small groups to talk about this, to get some ideas. And what activities could the tutor use to supplement the lesson? So you can turn to the person next to you and talk for a few minutes about those. And Mike, you're going to be in a group with Alfredo and Robin.
Hi, Robin.
Hello, hi Mike.
Hi, Alfredo.
Maybe some other words to describe
Well, I think in this, I was going to say email, but in the sense of like urgent call to the doctor, like, I don't think it's useful. I think you'd rather email for some other reason.
They could also talk about what
It could be.
gets there.
I mean, I guess I was gonna say vocabulary, other resources and interactions there were. To me, it was surprising that she knew the word symptom. I can imagine that you would have to explain that to someone or have definitions of words like that. What's the condition or what is the problem?
Exactly.
You know, various words
What
to
to do
get
when
that
you're
across.
Yes, right. And I want to pick up on your email idea, because that definitely could be a connection, because they maybe after the appointment, there's some online communication, maybe sometimes it's a doctor's portal or email or something to get a follow-up, or can I have reports, and especially if English is their second language, it might be useful to have something in writing that they can take their time and review.
And if there's a prescription, you know, like, or even maybe what they're saying, maybe it's written down, or maybe the doctor is electronically submitting that these days, but still it would be helpful probably for the writing the prescription is, and to understand in case the kid is allergic to some drugs or something.
Yeah, I think I'd have a really hard
Mike, did you want to add anything?
the reception.
The crosstalk is a little tough, so it's difficult to hear clearly.
Oh, sorry. We'll have to work this out. We'll have to iron this out. Okay. So you see the questions on the screen?
Can I see the question? No.
Oh, you can't see the PowerPoint?
Not now. No.
Oh.
Maybe it's just because you're nervous.
City
Zip codes.
It would be really hard for me to advance something.
Definitely, yeah. And even just to think about
So did you see the video?
I see the video, yeah, but not the screen, not the,
Okay, let me do this another way then. How's that? Do you see it now?
now I can see it, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. So what are your thoughts on those questions?
So kind of can follow that. I'm not sure that Western letters don't.
So like Alfredo was saying, maybe email could be a supplementary lesson to communicate. We were talking about how that could be to get follow-up reports about the tests, any tests that the son had, or
Yeah, not sure how to answer that one.
okay. Okay.
I mean, was the dictionary part of the possible solution to this?
Sure. Yep. Yep. So how would you think about using a dictionary?
And he can't do it.
Mike?
What's that?
How are you thinking about using the dictionary?
Well, for words that weren't clearly understood.
Okay. Yep. And sometimes students aren't sure how to use a dictionary, so that might involve teaching them how to look up a word, how to find a word, or learning how to use an English dictionary. Like the student sounds like she's at the right level to do that.
What about introducing something like WebMD or any internet-based medical, so that as a supplement, not to replace going to the doctor, obviously, but saying, you know, this might be a way to improve your vocabulary, or to either before or after the appointment to say, this might help you to read, you know, if you plug in symptoms and the diagnosis from the doctor to, at your own pace, at your leisure, read about this condition that you're suffering.
Yep. I was going to go show WebMD, but I'm afraid of using the screen. So, yeah, WebMD is a good, and you know what, a version of that that's in plain language, meaning not too many high level words, is Medline Plus. And I'll Medline Plus. Yep. Do you know that? Yeah.
So I just
Okay.
well, I was trying to just foster care.
So, can I interrupt you? Thank you. Wow, that was fast. Okay. So now we'll switch to your turn. You can pair up. You can stay with the same pair if you want to. It's kind of a small room, or small group, kind of a small room, hard to move around. But there's the stage. That's for you. You can pair up to a role play lesson. So one of you will be the tutor. One of you will be the student. Before that, you can talk for 5 minutes to plan one or more adaptation to this role play, and that would fit with the students that you're working with. So you can brainstorm together when you're talking what might be one way that you'd adapt it. Yep, so you can take 5 minutes now to talk, and then take a few minutes to do the role play, and then we'll debrief afterwards. So you can, you can say 3, yeah.
Okay.
So one of my
And maybe if you
told
could
me that
lean in a little bit so that Mike can hear you over the other people, that might help.
it would be in English.
Right.
And his English was a little shaky. So he said,
So how might you adapt that role play that we just saw? What is one way that you might adapt it to the students that you work with if you were going to do a
so I said, what I said was like, oh, it'll be fine.
So
Don't worry.
I was thinking going to the doctor, but it doesn't have to be that. If you want to change it to something else, that is fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to adapt it because I'm having this very basic English group.
I think you could invite
Like this lady that wants to hold the role play that we saw here.
Yeah.
She's almost advanced compared to the ladies and the gentlemen that I'm teaching.
Yeah.
like very basic English.
Yeah. So how much?
Sometimes it's difficult because they don't like
Like
to, I still ask them like basic questions. They just,
like, what are we talking?
I see the faces they're trying to,
Come up with it.
yeah, it's easier for me because my native language is Spanish, so they're mostly Spanish speakers. So sometimes I say it in Spanish and then go back to English, and then they just begin to.
They understand, yeah. So how could you simplify this? That was a long conversation.
Okay,
So one way to simplify it would be to make it very short and just like take one piece of that,
I guess talking about it.
and then practice that part.
What's your role? I can imagine if we just had a whiteboard or a blackboard and said, let's imagine this phone call to the doctor, sort of acting it out, holding your, fingers up to your ear and say, hey, hello, doctor, and then, so like in red, marker would be what the student is going to say, and in blue marker is what the doctor's office might be saying.
That's a great idea.
And then, I guess again, holding your thumb and your pinky up to your ear so that the student grasps that we're imitating the fact that we're on the telephone now. And I think we could just through, mime, get some of these things across. Well, basically, then they use kind of a lot of words.
Do you have that basic, or just that basic English, or just more advanced?
I have Vietnamese students, so I don't know their language at all. I can't be helpful, but there is another woman in the class who has a lot of different English skills. And she's a great volunteer, but yes, some of them are very basic.
And then okay, so if you ask somebody, what's your
What do you think, Mike?
Hi, Barbara. How are you?
Fine.
Good.
Can you listen? Can you?
Yes, I can hear. It's a little difficult because of all the crosstalk.
Yeah.
I know. I'm sorry, but there's nothing.
So that's a little difficult.
Yeah. Okay. So wait.
We're still brainstorming. Yeah, I'm thinking, okay, contract.
I'm not sure what else besides that. So should we just practice that?
Good, very good.
Yeah. So you thought for your students, that was too advanced, what we saw in the videos. They wouldn't be, so mine.
They might be able to do it. I'm going to try it. I'm definitely going to try it.
Yeah, for mine, I think they have enough confidence to try, but I'm not sure that the person on the other end of the phone would understand anything that they're saying. So, yeah, I mean, that's why they're there, to learn and to improve, to practice, so. We would just, but yeah, when they try to read after the teacher or after me, it's volunteer.
I don't know
It's really not quite there yet, so. Yeah.
I'm going to try the role play.
Part of this conversation, right? They're all
I'm going to try it on Thursday.
And then actually gives them a chance.
Let's see what happens.
That's a good practical thing, a doctor's appointment.
Mike has problems.
Okay. Mike, I'm sorry. I'm learning that this room is too small. We should have it in a larger room so there isn't so much noise. Yeah.
It's the problem is the crosstalk when everyone speaks at the same time.
Yeah. Well, that'll stop in like 2 minutes. Okay. Can I interrupt you? Oh, did you just get started? Okay. 1 more minute. So they needed 1 more minute. Yeah.
I've been with firm ABC for 5 years.
What topic are you going to use?
I'm going to identify one with them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Whatever comes up.
Yeah.
Okay. Like in the basic conversation, but something will come up that I'll just pick it up.
Yeah. And feel free if you need time to prepare for that, and they tell you the topic, and then the next time you come prepared. Don't feel like you have to do it right then. Yeah.
That's great.
Because if you need to prepare some pictures or figure out the vocabulary that they need, time to prepare for that makes sense.
I might have to prepare, like, look for the vocabulary that they will really.
Company offers.
Yeah, and if do they use a textbook?
Yes.
So you can find futures. Okay, so you can look for that chapter for ideas for if you need to find ideas, you can look in their book because probably it'll cover that covers common skills that the students areas of life, daily life.
Do you use books?
Yeah, and I had a lot of questions on that, but it's sort of related to.
Okay, sorry, I'm going to interrupt. Yeah. So I'll ask a few people to talk about what you role played and one thing that you adapted. So how about this group here?
We were role playing someone calling the teacher, student calling teacher to say not be at the next class.
And that's a really common need. And that's something that's really great to practice. It's really practical. It's good for the program, for what they need to do for the program itself. And so that's a great example. Yeah. And
teacher asked me back, why, what are you going to do? Or, I would say, the student would say, I'm going away.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm sick.
Yeah.
The reason,
so
yeah.
What you need, you get used to knowing that you're going to be asked why you won't be there.
Yeah.
And what your reason would be.
Yeah.
And then, the teacher would typically ask, will you be at the next?
Mm-hmm.
What you would say. Then.
Yeah.
Will you be back?
Mm-hmm.
That's what basically.
Yeah.
Great. And those are good things to remember to prepare the student for in advance of doing the role play. What kind of questions that they might be asked, various answers that they could give, and again, level appropriate. So if they're beginner level, maybe a couple questions and maybe 2 or 3 possible responses, and then they can role play with one another, and then you can switch students role playing with another. A great way to get people to practice a number of times is by having, like, for example, you were pairs, and then the teacher could have people pair up with the other person next to them, and then switch again, like up to 4 times it can be, for example. So they get a lot of repetition and they really learn it, because that repetition is really important to really learn it deeply. Thank you. What other pair would like to share?
So we practice following the library to try and book, what kinds of books to make what. And in this case, it's for a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, our number and book and like how we pick it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things that I use is try to get information from them. For the meeting, so I can come up with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, more than instead of giving them
Yes.
for them.
Right. Yeah, find out.
At the beginning, they didn't
Yeah. And then, the more personal it is, the more likely that they'll find it relevant and useful. Yeah. Okay. There are more ideas on the blog, and I'll show you the blog at the end, but there are a number of different types of role plays that can give you some ideas to invite your students to say, maybe one of those would be relevant.
Is there a resource somewhere that has like pre-prepared questions? We found it was really hard to think of what a doctor's office would say on the spot.
Well, that's where textbooks can come in handy. Yeah, if the teacher that you're working with has that, or if you can find out if you have a group to yourself and you don't have a teacher, you can find out the level, and then you can look online, or there are loads of websites. But you can also go or order a book on the library from the library, a textbook at that level. Yeah, don't recreate the wheel, and then tailor it, So the second activity is reading, and again, notice the steps of the lesson and the ways that the students use language. And again, the emphasis is making sure that the students do more talking than you do, in general. It's supposed to be teachers talk 30% of the time and students talk 70% of the time.
Andrea Eckelberger demonstrates how she helps learners develop beginning literacy skills.
Yesterday, we wrote a story. What happened in the story?
Let me just check something. Mike, can you see the video? Mike?
No, I can't.
You can't. Okay.
Activity 2 reading up.
Okay, let me. There. Yeah. Okay, can you see a picture of two people now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah. What did we do in the story? Where did we go?
The hardware store. The hardware store. Where is the hardware store?
This is a class for emergent leaders who haven't been in the United States very long. And we're working on developing literacy skills alongside of life skills to help them to be successful while living in the United States. We have classes for 20 hours a week, 2 hours in the morning, a short break, and then another 2 hours after lunch.
Questions? Yeah.
Well, we used the language experience approach where we all had a common experience that we did together. And while it was happening, I took pictures and printed them out so that I could show the students. And we went through the pictures, and in each picture talked about, as a whole class, what do you see in the picture? What did we do? What is this person doing? And then as we were talking out, and as the students were giving me the language that they remembered and that they already knew from the previous units that we've been doing, I would write the story down on the board. So when we finished, we had a story where a lot of language that the learners were already familiar with, that they'd already talked about and thought about, with a few additional words that I helped them put in there with vocabulary that I wanted to make sure that they knew.
Ooh, nice, nice. Do you use the mousetrap? Yeah, some people watch mousetraps. The mousetraps. And we found the cockroach powder and the bed bug spray.
That's practical.
And Ning found some other things. What else does Ning have? What else did people buy? Stove cleaner. Yeah, stove cleaner. And what is this?
I feel like there's no sense in teaching someone how to write something if they don't know how to say it first, because you have to know what a word means for it to have any meaning when you're writing it. So we do a lot of work with vocabulary development, getting people to feel comfortable talking about themselves, sharing information, but we're always trying to bring that back and connect it to print to give what they're writing meaning.
In the bag, and change gives you change. Good. And then what do we say? Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And how did we feel? Happy? Happy? Maybe a little bit cold because it was snowing a lot. We had to go back to school. Can everybody take out your story? And I want you to look at the story, read it in your head. Okay, so read the story quietly. Read it in your head.
The day before, the learners copied the class-generated story into their notebooks.
Okay, does everybody want to put your finger on your paper? I will read the story. You read your paper and follow along. So right now, just listening. Okay. On Friday, we go to the hardware store. The hardware store is on the corner of Payne Avenue and Maryland Avenue. We ask questions.
Following along with the text, while Andrea reads aloud, helps students connect oral language to print, an early step in literacy development.
We find the bed bug spray. We find the stove cleaner, wall cleaner, dish soap, and washing machine soap. We pay money to the cashier. Good. Okay. This time, I will read one sentence. Everybody listen, then repeat. Okay. On Friday, we go to the hardware store. On Friday, we go to the hardware store.
Repeating the sentences reinforces the connection between spoken language and the written word.
We say thank you.
Okay, I'll stop it there. You see there's more. And the link is on the blog, so if you want to watch the rest of it, it'll be there for you. And
the woman in the first video was from Minnesota, too. Does Minnesota have some kind of huge ESOL?
they're pretty good.
How do you know it was from Minnesota?
I could hear
The accent, yeah. Minnesota.
Well, it also said St. Paul on it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, this one did. You said the first one did too?
Well, it said in the credits.
Oh, it did say in the credits.
This one, it said Minnesota in the credits. The first one I could hear.
There's, okay. So what were the steps of that lesson?
Have a group experience.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Like the vocabulary and pictures of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So first they went on the trip.
And
they had that group experience, yeah.
And she took pictures of it and printed out so that she could then use that in the lesson in the classroom.
And yeah, and so the language experience approach, the way it usually goes, has someone done that before? Or know something about that?
Hearing and writing and speaking.
That's after, yeah. That's the group, as a group, the group tells the story and the teacher writes it on the board. So the teacher may have prompts. So where did we go yesterday? We went to the hardware store. We went to the hardware store. She writes it on the board. So she elicits the story from the students, and so it's their words and so they can. It comes from them, and so they understand it better. And then she writes it, and she could write in some corrections, level appropriate corrections, and then they copy that down. Yeah, and then like you were saying, and then
they copy it down.
And they copy it down.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. She writes it on the board, and then they copy it down. So there are all these several ways that the students create the language, hear the language, write the language, and then relate it, each of those ways repeatedly. They hear it and they read it. They read it and they see it, and all those many ways to reinforce the connection. Yeah. I'm going to, let's take a few minutes for this. What resources could the tutor use as part of the lesson, and what activities could the tutor use to supplement this lesson?
So when I think of tutor, I think of one-on-one, okay? So you could create an experience, right? You don't have to have a group experience. I really like the idea of taking a picture. I mean, it's easy nowadays, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Any other? Yeah.
But I like the outing, go to a store together, or the hardware store, or gift shop, whatever it is, that maybe, especially if the student has a need.
So I'm thinking like next week is Halloween. That may be a foreign concept to a lot of folks. Probably not if you've been in the country for a couple of years, I guess. But someone showing up at your door and
yeah. Trick or treat. Yeah.
What do you want? Like, what do you want?
Especially like videos, or something like that. They get them.
Yeah, with the costumes. They can be scary, weird costumes.
Yeah, so but I mean, I think Thanksgiving's another easy one. Would be an easy one. Or a birthday. Right? A birthday would be an easy one.
Or voting.
Voting, yeah.
Because we have to deal with that in the citizenship class.
Yeah, so these are the ways that you tailor it to your students. Yeah. So again, it's your turn. So with your partner, you can talk about how you might adapt that kind of approach to the students that you're working with, and then do another role play.
Well, it just occurred to me, one thing that came up in the last classroom was lottery tickets. So the lottery is so big right now, and
everybody's talking about the lottery.
Yeah, and in fact, they all wanted to put money in an envelope, collect money from asking the teacher, and go in together to buy a lottery ticket, and then if they win, what will they do with the money and all that? Or like public. But I suppose it could be
The lottery is
around that. If you go to the store, how do you ask for a lottery ticket? What do you say? What would the person behind the counter ask?
We can role play that.
Yeah. Okay. Should we do that?
Yes.
What do you want to be?
I'll be no, you'll the buyer. I'm the clerk.
Just even looking at a map and taking a picture of that and giving you.
Hello.
And you can find out where they
I
need to
would
get
like to buy a lottery ticket, please.
and focus on
Okay,
those.
which one do you
What are the possibilities?
Well, you have this. I'm just.
Mega.
We have the state lottery. We have the national lottery, and then this mega lottery that it's really everybody's touching.
I heard of one called Powerball Mega.
That's the one. That's the one.
$1 billion. That's
Yes.
the one I want to win.
Okay, that's the one you want
How much I have to
to
give you?
buy. It's $1.
Okay. Here's $1.
Okay, just one.
And then maybe like,
what do you
want more?
recommend? At least 5. You're gonna have more chances.
Okay, here's 5.
Okay. So here are your tickets.
Thank you.
Take care of them.
How do I know when I win?
You have to either read the newspaper or listen to the news, or you can go online. There's the address, the website in your ticket, and just check it, and you'll know if you win. I will know too that I sold those tickets. The winning tickets. I'll get some
money
commission.
too. Okay. Well, good luck to us.
Good luck to you too.
Okay, thank you. How did we do, Mike?
Like the commuter rail, if they're doing
No, I'm just saying.
So we debrief? How was that?
It was nice.
Yeah.
You spent $5.
Did that help? Yeah, it wasn't really comfortable. You talked me up into more money than I expected
because
to.
it's so difficult to win. So by buying more, you have more chances.
But so ethically, should we discourage them from playing the lottery, or we shouldn't worry about it? Unless you don't worry about it.
I don't think so. I don't think we should worry about it.
If they want to buy it, we shouldn't encourage it, but if they want to buy a lottery,
yeah,
we're reacting to what they want.
Yeah, we pick it up from them, and we're using what they said to us. So we don't go into morality or ethical issues.
Ridiculous chances, the odds being so small.
I mean, if they want to spend a couple of bucks or pounds or whatever, it's okay. I don't really think there are any ethical
Yeah, and it's a good cause. It supports education and then it could be part of the lesson to
how do I get
to say if you win $1 billion, what will you do with the money?
What if you win?
What will you do with the money?
Yes. Oh, excellent.
That's a whole lot of
That's a
possibilities.
Yes. Oh, you have like 1 hour of conversation
Find
right
out
there.
what everybody's like dreams are,
That's going to create a whole excitement.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Are you hearing us at all, Mike?
the new.
Yes.
Third thing would be,
Is he there?
And I've got my lottery tickets too.
Okay, you already bought yours. Okay. You feeling good about it? When's the is it tonight, the drawing?
Same thing, so that's 3 times.
Yeah, I think one of them's tonight.
You know anything about it?
Try the lottery.
The lottery. Oh, good luck, Mike.
We'll meet.
Yeah, I heard. That's good. Yeah.
And then the debrief part would be getting reinforcement.
Okay, let's come back together as a group. And so how about we hear from the other pairs, other groups? You want to talk about something that you decided to have for this activity, for the reading?
Yeah. Go ahead. Well, we decided to focus on using public transportation, so we thought we could go on the T or a bus or whatever it may be. And for reading materials, we'd include like a map of different routes, and we talked about like the signs that say when the T's not working or whatnot, like take pictures of those and go over them.
That's good.
And then you could go.
And then,
So you can learn how to use a Charlie card or a ticket or something. Some other exercises that we thought would be good add-on exercises was you could have your students write a really short essay about how do I get to work or how do I get to the store, which would include some additional extra vocabulary and probably wouldn't be too difficult, but could be at any level.
And another thing for both of these activities actually is, well, especially the role play really, is that this computer that most students have in their pockets, their cell phones, has a video, app on it, and so they can video themselves practicing it, watch it, and repeat it, and learn from what they see. It can be like 3 students together, 2 students are doing the role play, and the 3rd student is videotaping it, and then they watch it together and, what did you do well? What can you do a little bit better? And then practice it again. And yeah.
Oh, that's a little intimidating.
I know teachers who do that, and it could depend on the students. I guess there could be some who are, but they, if it's just going to stay with them, then they're okay with that. Yeah. And how about this group, the 3? The triad.
We talked about using the lottery mania that's happening now as the exercise, and just the role playing around that, and getting students to practice going into a store, asking for a lottery ticket.
And what do you see in the news every single night about that? It's like, what would you do if you won?
Right, and we talked about that in the debrief of the exercise.
Like at the end, we bring that up. It's going to create a whole new
lesson.
Just
curriculum. There's so many classes.
Know about the dreams and the ideas that people have.
Get to know each other a lot. Yeah, talk about this.
But the answers are really simple. I mean, I buy a house, I buy a car.
With billions
vacation,
of dollars.
I give money away, I help my family. It's really short. The ideas aren't really complicated, right?
It can be, yeah. So it can be, for different levels. It's something that could be done for different levels.
That'd be such a good conversation topic for my group on Saturday.
Number 1 answer for, you know what the number 1 answer for immigrants is? Going back to their countries.
Really? Yeah. I would ask, what about your teacher?
Okay, so this is recorded, so you can review it another time. There's the URL again. Let me show you the website. It's you click resources blog here. And this is where all of the workshops materials are, so including from last year. And the instructions are here for how to post to the blog, because you're invited to do that. So here's this workshop. You'll see the slideshow here, and then the resources that I showed you are here, including the role plays, the website that has different role plays. And then to post about it, you just click comments, and you fill in your name. Don't need an email. I don't think you need the email. You don't need a website. I can't get rid of that. It's part of the template. And the comments, if you share what you were thinking about trying, what you did try, and how it went, that would be great, because everybody has different schedules, and so this is a way that we can keep sharing after this workshop. So you just type in there, click the box, notify me of new comments, so you can automatically receive in your email. You'd have to put your email here to do that when someone responds, and then you click submit.
January, okay, no. I just saw January 2028.
Yeah, so you can so you can see other topics here. Let me go back to this. So before you go, please go to this on your device. Please go to this website here. It's a very brief evaluation. I'd love to get your feedback on tonight's workshop. And this, by the way, tinyurl.com is a great tool to share web addresses with your students if you do that. I took a crazy long Google Forms URL, which was like a foot long, and then I went to tinyurl.com, pasted it in, and then I made my own address for that. So it's a way to make websites more accessible to students. tinyurl.com. And I'll go so that you can feel comfortable to be honest with your answers. But first, I wanted Mike to be able to see everybody. So if you want to wave to Mike, I'm going to turn my computer around. You can wave.
Go Red Sox.
Red Sox is right, yeah.
Tonight.
Tonight, yeah. I was wondering who was actually going to show up tonight, actually.
It's not time.
It's not
It'll
time
be a
yet.
4-hour game, that's all right.
Okay. This time, yes, this time, okay. All right. So Mike, can you see the screen with the wrap up? Yeah, okay, so if you could fill out the form, that would be great. So thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody's participation and
Thank
coming
you.
out. It's great energy. Nice to have a group like you. And I'll every month we'll have a workshop, so you'll be getting something in your email about the next one. I'm going to stop the recording.